Robbie, tell me about that day 13 years ago. I'm sure it's never far from your mind.
Well, really, I don't remember very much about that day. I do, I have heard that when the army came to tell me that David had been killed, one of the first things that I said is, "You may not kill anybody in the name of my child." And I guess that must have been the beginning of all of this work for me.
Tell me, do you remember what happened when you were told the news? I mean, how was it delivered to you? And that very moment when that happened?
You're asking difficult questions. It's because you're Pakistani. So actually, how it works is the army came to tell me. And I'd woken up very early in the morning because I had a sense I had a sense of dread. And I went to my office very early, and the army arrived, and I said, "Go away," and I started to shout at them because I knew, of course, the minute that they arrived, why they were there. And mostly for the rest of that day, I don't remember very much of what happened.
You spoke to him the day before this happened. What was your last conversation?
David never really shared anything about the army with me. He was a student at Tel Aviv University, and he was studying for his master's in the philosophy of education. And he was part of the peace movement. And when he was called to go to these reserves, he didn't want to go because he didn't want to serve in the occupied territories. And so we had a long conversation. And then he called me and he told me that actually he was in an absurdly dangerous place, which he would never have normally shared with me. He said, "We are like sitting ducks." And he just said, "I love you."
You know, as a mother, how do you let go of that rage?
I didn't have rage about that. My rage was that he should never have been there in the first place. My rage was that here was a person who was part of the peace movement. Here was a person who went because he thought he would treat people with dignity. And I understood very early that this man did not kill David because he was David. He killed him because he was a symbol of an occupying army. If he had known David, that's not easy for me to say. If he had known him, he could never have done that.
The man who killed David, he's in prison now. Have you been able to communicate with him?
Well, you saw, I think, in the beginning of this clip is the letter that I wrote. And if I ever can give you a gift, when I wrote that letter, I understood in my heart that I'd given up being a victim and that I was free. And that was the most amazing revelation. And so whatever I do, my life is not contingent on what this man will do. And yes, I still want to meet him, but it comes from another place altogether. And so one night, I was watching television when they were freeing the 1,000 prisoners for Gilad Shalit, a young Israeli soldier who had been captured and killed. And by mistake, they said that they were going to free Thaya. And that was another test. You see, all of this work, there's no such thing as instant reconciliation where you wake up one morning and you're suddenly free and rainbows and flowers and bad poetry. It's not that. It's a really difficult path, and it's a test to see if you actually mean what you say. And it's difficult. I'm not a saint, but I understand very clearly why he did what he did. And I understood that he'd been, as a small child, he'd seen his uncle very violently killed by the Israeli army, and he lost 2 uncles in the second uprising. And so he went on a path of revenge and killed 10 people.
What was it that made you come to that realization, that on this path of reconciliation with yourself?
Well, I think if you've noticed by now, I have a slightly South African accent. And the whole day I've been listening to Indians and discovered that we speak the same language. I think it's the British, what they did to us. So, and I don't know.
It takes a lot, and you know, you've channeled it into this incredible positive work that you're doing now.
But you see, David was all about education. The minute I met Palestinian mothers, and I recognized that we shared the same pain, and I recognized that we could be such a tremendous force in the world for change, because this message is not only for Israel and Palestine. This message is international, and many in this country.
Absolutely. We're sitting in India, Pakistan. We've had 2 generations that have been at war, and there's much to be learned from what you are doing. Tell us about the parent circle and what it does.
We are more than 600 families who've all lost an immediate family to the conflict. And we believe that there has to be a framework for a reconciliation process to be an integral part of any future peace agreement. So all the work that we're doing on the ground is geared to that. We have one specific project. I don't know if we have time that I can tell you, because I can go until tomorrow morning. But it's called History Through the Human Eye. And it's a narrative project. You see, people see their history through their own nationality. And when you can understand the narrative of the other, and when you see the humanity in the other, that's more or less the end of conflict. And so when you understand how somebody sees their history, and I wish we have a Pakistani and an Indian, and we would choose a date. Let's make it 1947, something like that. And you could discuss how each of you saw it. It's not that you would fall into each other's arms and love each other, but what would actually happen is you would understand with empathy how the other sees their narrative. And that can be a very, very freeing and trust-building process. And this is one of the processes that we do with adults, because I believe that we have no time to wait for children to grow up. Adults must be educated.
Absolutely. And while, I mean, something profound happened to you when you were in the parent circle. You met somebody, and a Palestinian woman, and her name is Bushra, and just like you, she had something happen to her. And if we can watch a video.
And I want to thank you especially for coming, because I know what is in your heart.
هي بتعرف بالضبط شو في قلبك.
How long ago did you lose your son?
قبل قديش مستشفى؟ 3 years and a half.
3.5 years.
Like I told you.
And what was his name?
شو كان اسمه؟
Mahmoud? You know, I will show you a picture of David. Yes? So for why?
Hello.
Haram.
Hello.
A terrible bond to share. And we welcome Bushra on stage, who now lives in Hebron, in the West Bank, and with her Tima, who's going to be translating for her. Bushra, tell us about your son Mahmoud.
محمود أنا خلفته بعد 5 سنين من الزواج.
I gave birth to Mahmoud after 5 years of getting married.
كان أول فرحة في حياتي.
He was my first happiness.
كان الشمعة اللي ضوت بيتي.
He was a candle that lightened my house.
محمود كان في الانتفاضة الأولى ولد صغير.
At the first intifada, Mahmoud was a little kid.
فأنا كنت مبسوطة إنه كان صغير في الانتفاضة الأولى.
I was very happy that he was very little.
بس قلت ما بكبر محمود إلا الانتفاضة مخلصة.
But I thought that when Mahmoud will grow up, the intifada will be over.
بس كبر محمود وكبرت الانتفاضة.
When Mahmoud grew up, the intifada growed more.
صار عمره 17 سنة.
When he became 17,
محمود كان شاب حلو كتير.
he was very good looking.
حنون.
He was very warm.
بحب.
Tell me the day you found out that he had died.
يوم من قتل محمود أنا كان في الجيش كانوا بدهم يطلعوا يهدوا بيوت في البلد.
The Israeli armies were in my village trying to destroy houses.
طلعوا البلد كلها طلعت من البيوت عشان يشوفوا الجيش.
The people who lives in the village get out of their houses to see what's going on outside.
كان محمود برا البيت.
Mahmoud was outside of the house.
كان هو وأخوته جاب أخوته من برا وقال لي لازم يضلوا أخوتي في البيت لأن الجيش أجوا على البيت على البلد
He was out to bring his two other siblings into the house, and he told her, the situation is outrageous outside, please keep them home.
أنا خايف عليهم لا يصير فيهم إشي.
I'm scared for them.
وقلت له أنت كمان أنا خايف عليك خليك أنت كمان في البيت.
I told him that I'm also scared for you, please stay at the house.
قال لي أنا تخافيش عليا.
He asked her not to worry.
محمود كان يدرس في البيت.
Mahmoud was studying at the house.
وأنا كنت أشتغل في البيت.
I was working at the house.
بعد شوي سمعت صوت رصاص قوي.
And then I heard a voice of shooting.
رحت أجري على محمود على الغرفة أدور عليه.
I started looking for Mahmoud in his room.
ما لقيته في
I
البيت.
didn't find him at house.
رحت أجري على أبوه حكيت له محمود مش في البيت روح دور لي عليه وين محمود.
So I went for my husband to ask him to go and look for Mahmoud. He's not at home.
بعد شوي أنا صرت صابني شيء مش منيح سمعت صوت رصاص قوي.
I didn't know what really to feel or what got into me after I heard the shooting.
طلع أبوي يدور عليه.
My husband went to look for him.
تأخر ما أجاش.
He was late. He didn't come back.
أنا صرت في حالة مش طبيعية صرت مش عارف شو بدي أعمل.
I was hysterical. I didn't know what to do.
بعد شوي أجا ابن جيراننا.
Then one of the neighbors came to my house
حكى لي محمود تصاب إصابة خفيفة وأخذناه على المستشفى
and
منيح.
told me that Mahmoud was just injured and we took him to the hospital.
أنا طلعت أجري من البيت مش عارف وين بدي أروح.
I got out of my house and I started running, but I didn't know really where to go.
حسيت إشي صابني مش طبيعي.
I wasn't who I am.
صرت أجري في البلد مش عارف وين.
I started running everywhere in the village.
وأنا أجري وقعت على الأرض.
When I was running, I fell on the floor.
أجا أخوي أخذني ركبني في سيارة.
Then my brother met me and he put me in his car
حكى لي محمود منيح ما تخافي.
and told me, Mahmoud is good, don't be scared.
لما وصلت المستشفى.
But when I arrived to the hospital,
لقيت أبوه باب المستشفى.
his father was in front of the hospital,
قاعد على الأرض وبضرب على وجهه.
sitting on the floor, hitting on his face,
ويحكي لي محمود راح.
telling me that Mahmoud is gone.
محمود راح.
Mahmoud is gone.
شو يعني محمود راح؟
I didn't understand. What does it mean, Mahmoud is gone?
يعني حياتي كمان أنا راحت.
It means that my life also is gone.
يعني الفرح في البيت راح.
It means the happiness inside my house and the joy is gone.
يعني السعادة والأمان راح.
My safety and my happiness is gone.
ما أقدرش أحكي ولا أوصف الشعور اللي أنا
I can't describe the feeling
كنت فيه.
that I felt.
Bushra, when it happened, you wanted revenge. You felt a lot of anger. How did you channel that into revenge, into the reconciliation path that you've gone on now?
أنا كنت غضبان كثير لحد يعني قعدت 4 سنين أو 3 سنين حياتي متغيرة ما كنتش
I had
أطلع من
lot of
البيت.
anger. For 3 or 4 years, I just didn't get out of my house.
كان كل تفكيري إنك كيف محمود راح.
All the whole time I was thinking
ليش
how
محمود
Mahmoud is
راح؟
gone, why he's gone.
لحد يوم ما كانت في عندي صديقة اسمها سهام أبو عواد.
Until there was a day that a friend of mine called Siham Abu Awad was at my house.
كانت عضوة في المنتدى العائلات.
She's also a member at the parent circle.
حكت لي تعالي اشربي عندي فنجان قهوة.
Asked me to come to visit her and have coffee at her house.
هي بقت حكيت لي عن المنتدى يعني إني أنا أدخل في المنتدى وأنا ما وافقت.
She told me before about the parent circle, but I didn't agree to join.
في يوم قالت لي تعالي اشربي عندي قهوة يعني. ورحت عندها على البيت. فجأة وأنا قاعد تدخل علينا واحدة إسرائيلية.
And when I went to her house to have coffee, once in a sudden, an Israeli person came into the house.
فأنا يومها ما عجبنيش الوضع كنت حكيت لها شو بتساوي أنا.
I didn't like that at all. I asked her, "What are you doing?"
This was the first time that you had met an Israeli that wasn't an Israeli soldier.
لا.
Tell me about that meeting with Robbie. What do you remember?
يومها أنا جيت بدي أطلع من البيت لما شفتها كنت بدي أطلع من البيت.
I wanted to leave my friend's house when I saw Robi.
حكت لي سهام استني شوي.
And she told me stay for a while.
قلت لها أنتي مجنونة أنا بدي أقعد مع إسرائيليين.
I said, "Are you crazy? I'm not gonna sit with Israeli."
أجت روبي علي.
Then Robi came to me
حكت لي ممكن أحكي معك شوي.
and told me, "Can I speak to you a little?"
بلعت فيها هيك ما كنتش بدي أحكي معها.
I looked at her and I didn't really want to talk to her.
قالت لي بس شوي بدي أحكي معك.
She told me, "Just hear me for a while."
قلت لها تفضلي. فحكت لي صارت تسأل في عن محمود ابني يعني كيف استشهد.
She started asking me about how Mahmoud was killed.
وهي حكت لي عن ابنها.
And she told me about her son.
ورجيتها صورة ابني.
Then I showed her the picture of my son.
وهي ورجتني صورة ابنها.
And she showed me the picture of hers.
بكينا.
And we cried together.
لما بكت روبي وطلعت في عينيها.
When Robi cried and I looked in her eyes,
حسيت إنها هي بغض النظر هي شو كانت
I understood
إسرائيلية.
that she's a mother. It doesn't matter if she's Israeli.
بس هي
She's a mother.
هي فاقدة.
She lost a son.
هي مجروحة بجرحي.
And she's hurted with the same hurt that I have.
لقيت دمعي ودمعها واحد.
And I found that our tears are the same.
Bushra, now you go and talk to other Palestinians and you take the message of the parent circle to them. And often you're met with a certain type of resentment and there are backlashes. Talk to us about the kind of things people say to you when you go to them.
أنا في ناس بتعارضني كثير وفي ناس متقبلة الوضع يعني.
Some of the people accept what I'm doing and some of them don't.
اللي بيعارضوني بيحكوا لي إني أنا ببيع في دم ابني.
The one who are against what I'm doing are telling me that I'm selling the blood of my son.
بس أنا ما ببيع دم ابني.
But I'm not selling the blood of my
ولا
son.
مرة ببيع دم ابني.
And I will never do that.
ولا عمري بنسى ابني.
And I'll never forget my son.
أنا بشتري في دم أولادي الموجودين.
I'm buying the blood of my other children that are still alive.
I want us all to watch this powerful PSA that your group has created that's aimed at Israeli and Palestinian parents.
אנחנו לא רוצים אתכם פה.
אנחנו לא רוצים אתכם פה.
لا نريدكم هنا.
לא רוצים אתכם פה.
لا نريدكم هنا.
لا نريدكم هنا.
لا نريدكم هنا.
אנחנו לא רוצים אתכם פה.
لا نريدكم هنا.
لا نريدكم هنا.
עופו מפה. אנחנו לא רוצים אתכם פה.
אנחנו לא רוצים אתכם פה.
Robbie, tell me what you do in the parent circle, because you share a lot more than just grief.
Oh, it's not a therapy group, you know. We have a direct purpose, and is this the time that I can advertise?
Sure.
Okay. So we have a project, and it's a kind of a challenge for everybody. It's called Taking Steps. And we had a movie that was made about the narrative project, and I started to travel a lot in the West Bank with this movie. And everywhere I went, I met more and more women who made embroidery, but they didn't have the money to buy good threads or to buy good cloth. And so I kept saying, you know, but how long did it take you to make this? And they would say a week, and I'd say, and how much did you sell it for? And it would be just like $2. And I think to myself, this is insane, you know? And it's pity buying, and I think there's nothing worse than people who buy things because they feel sorry for you. So the ultimate product, after a long journey, which I will not bore you with, came. You may have noticed that we are wearing some rather interesting shoes.
Yes, tell us about the sneakers.
Okay, so if you see that bird, I suppose you can't really see in the back, but anybody who's interested can come up close. Shall I destroy the whole thing?
No.
So this bird is a bird of reconciliation, and next June, we want women all over the world to wear the shoes or to wear a patch, which we've created. We have already got the agreement of the House of Commons and the European Parliament and Congress and Germany. So here's the challenge to India. I guess Pakistan won't do it if the Israelis are involved, but it might. It's not that I'm doing nasty digs or anything.
It is interesting.
So we want women to firstly wear them, and any man who wants to lace them into their shoes. You might even notice Madame Blanchet in the same shoes. And it's a wonderful way because you can say, the woman I'm running for, or the woman I'm wearing these for, or I'm walking for reconciliation, and take a picture of yourself and send it to a site which we will create.
Great.
And it could be the most incredible statement because, you know, nobody asks us, shall we go to war? Nobody asks us as women, shall we negotiate a ceasefire? And nobody asks us, shall we sign a peace agreement? So it's time for women to come to the table. It's time.
Bushra, I just want to ask you that the dangers are still very much there. You have another son, Syed, and he's been arrested twice now, and you worry about him. Tell me what you're doing to keep him safe.
أنا سيد انسجن كان عمره 15 سنة أول مرة.
My son Sayed was arrested at the first time when he was 15.
قعد شهرين.
He spent 2 months at jail.
ضليت أحاول مني دفعت مبلغ من الفلوس مني أطلعته.
Then I paid money in order to get him out of jail.
بعد فترة كمان انسجن كان عمره 17 سنة.
The next time he was in jail, he was 17.
ما رضوش أني أدفع مصاري ويطلعوه.
And they didn't agree to have a bail.
حكموه 6 شهور.
And he was judged to be in jail for 6 months.
وكنت ممنوعة من زيارته نهائيا.
And I wasn't allowed to visit him.
فبعد ما طلع من السجن كمان ضل يضرب حجار.
After he came out of the jail, he still went to demonstrations to throw stones.
ضليت أحكي معاه إنه ما يضرب حجار.
The whole time I was telling him not to do that.
أنا ما بقدر أتحمل إني أنا أفقد كمان واحد فيه.
Because I can't handle the fact that I may lose another son.
ما رد علي.
He never listened.
فلقيت طريقة إني أنا كمان أنزل معاه أضرب حجار.
Then I found a way to convince him. It's to go with him to throw stones.
إذا هو بده يموت أنا كمان بدي أموت.
I told him, if you want to die, I also want to die with you.
ليش هو يموت وأنا أضل عايش؟
How can it happen that he will die and I will stay alive?
لما شافني هيك.
And when he saw my reaction,
صار يخفف مرة على مرة.
he stopped going.
كل مرة كان ينزل.
Robbie, You always seem to have this sense of optimism. What gives you optimism?
Firstly, I can't give up hope. You know, it's fine if you don't live in Israel and Palestine not to want to compromise. And so this is not work. This is my life now. And I guess that you all are watching the news lately and have seen that the violence has erupted again. And we have created a tent again where we meet every Saturday night. But more than that, one needs to look at children who are now going out on the streets with knives and think to yourself, why are they doing this? You know, are they emulating their parents who were great heroes in the second uprising? Are they so without hope that they don't care? Do they think they're invincible? Because, you know, young people think they're invincible. They think nothing can happen to them. And maybe what we should do is to show them the consequences of a child who dies for the family. That family is never the same again. That family becomes Bushra and Robbie.
I think I speak for all of us. The two of you give us hope that compassion and understanding will allow for future understanding and for there to be some sort of peace, whether it's in Israel or Palestine or anywhere where we see conflict today. So thank you. Thank you for your inspiring stories.